Alors, nous sommes en direct du salon afro-canadien à Ottawa et nous avons le plaisir d'avoir avec nous cet après-midi une grande poétesse qui nous arrive de Toronto, Madame Lillian Allen. Good afternoon, Lillian.
Yeah, good afternoon.
We're so happy to have this little chat with you. So we saw each other last night, so but now it's kind of a little bit more intimate in terms of
Yes.
a little bit of dialogue. So maybe you can tell for the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, I'm just glad to be here to, to see my people and so on. Unfortunately, I'm unilingual, but I'm just so enjoying everything
Yeah.
and picking up little bits and pieces. So I'm glad you even consider talking to me.
Hi, that's perfect. But you told me yesterday that you understand a little bit of French, even though you don't speak it.
Tiny bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you might be
Yeah.
able to catch some of the discussions while
Oh
people are
yeah,
talking.
and language is more than just words.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I get the vibe, I get the emotionalism,
Mhm.
I get the intention, I get the relationality
Yeah,
about it.
yes.
I'm happy. That's
Yeah.
for me. That's language.
But it's great because you seems to be a happy person. Is that the case?
I think so. Most of the time.
Because I'm like that too. So,
Yeah.
you a poet, a poetess, like we said
Okay.
in French,
Yeah.
and also like you a slammer. You do the spoken word. I don't know if we couldn't say
Yeah.
it if it's slam,
Yeah.
but we saw the performance last night. It was absolutely wonderful, and your poems, the sensitivity, and the vibe. We get the vibe like
Yeah.
that permeates through your words. Um, what brought you to poetry?
Yeah. Well, I don't know exactly. All I
Mhm.
know that I've been reading poetry from reading and trying to recite poetry ever since I was little.
Okay.
Um, Language is something was very important when I was growing up in Jamaica. We didn't have TV.
Hmm.
We had the only radio in our community, and we would listen to it. We listened to cricket, listen to the music, mostly American music, British semi-classical music, etc. And then they would have local kind of, little plays and
Yeah.
DJs in the vernacular, and that always just sparked me up.
Yeah. But the,
And
the I guess the language, it's really part of your upbringing.
totally
Yeah.
part of my upbringing. My relatives, I had a big family with lots of relatives, and that's how we communicated and celebrated. You just chat, 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 and sometimes you have nothing to say, but you chat pure foolishness, and it just feel nice. It just as a way of
Yeah.
communicating.
But
So,
so much so, I remember like I went to Jamaica many moons ago, and I learned one word, one phrase, because he said the lime is getting sour now. So, and that stays with me like forever. So maybe you can explain that to
yeah,
people.
well,
Yeah,
I'm not sure what they meant in that context, but generally, a lime is, just a gathering and a chat
yeah,
chatting,
that's right.
and it can be anything else.
Mm.
It just means, right now it ain't doing nothing.
No.
It's becoming maybe cantankerous,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little bit not what somebody wants,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So yeah,
But I mean, what they meant, I guess, by then was because the conversation, it's dying. You know, like it's time to go home now because the lime
yes,
is getting
yes,
sour.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
No, that's
Mm.
that's a precise
Okay.
kind of meaning.
So, what are your sources or source of inspiration?
Well, I've always been concerned with justice,
Hmm.
and that permeates everything. Ever since I was growing up, I couldn't understand how some people had so much. And my mother and father woke up at 5 in the morning, and I went to bed at 9, and they were still up. When I woke up,
Wow.
and then I figure out how come did other people's days have more hours? The rich people, people with the Mercedes on the
Hmm.
hill and so forth. And something isn't right here. And
Hmm.
then in school, they didn't want us to talk the Jamaican
Yep.
language. They're telling us, "Oh no, that's a gutter language. You should speak the Queen's English." And I figured, but that's what my family, my
Yeah.
aunties, my grandmother, and so forth. So I realized they're criticizing them.
Hmm.
And to me, they were the best people in the world, still are, most decent. They're not causing any war. They're not,
Hmm.
doing an injustice to anybody. And I took exception to that. I didn't like that. And I say, you know, I'm going to stand with them. And I started to bring that language and bring their presence and their ideas more into my life instead of lightening up and whitening up,
Yeah.
which a colonized society would like you to do and train you to be.
You mentioned yesterday, I think it was important for you also to be able to keep the language because that was the way for you to communicate with your aunties, your uncles, your grandparents as well.
Yeah, this when we meet, there is nothing to declare or defend.
Hmm.
You just be,
Yeah.
right? And the language is so beautiful that no matter how you translate it into English, it cannot
Let's say
be
the same.
precise.
Yeah.
It's not the
Yeah.
same. So I'm at home in the language.
Mhm.
Even if I'm somewhere, if I should land at Mars, if I can talk Jamaican and have vernacular and other people do it, I'm at home in the language. It's my home.
We just talked about that a few minutes ago about the languages and the oppression that a lot of us in the Caribbean feels the same because in Haiti we were prevented of speaking Creole because that wasn't the proper language and similar to what you said.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, and it still is, right? Um, they put a hierarchy to the language.
Mhm.
They would even say it's different.
Mhm.
They would even say I don't like it, but then they have to put a value on it
Mhm.
and say this is better than this, which I think is ridiculous. To me, that's the colonized way, putting you in your place, keeping you there, and you know that's some of the things I think we have to fight against. We have to revitalize the language. Plus, what is ours? If we become what they have and they given it, what do we have?
Mhm.
So I want to keep the language for myself, my community, and my children to come. I don't want them to just be like anybody else, right? They can do that too, but they must have something that is theirs because we are each unique. Communities are unique, and it's important to me that we keep with language and we talk in with
Okay.
language.
How do people in Jamaica manage to keep the language alive? It's not taught in school, from what I know.
Well, now they're trying to make it the
Oh,
national
they're trying
language,
to. Okay.
and actually, it's really it's a revival because people are trying to decolonize, and they're realizing now that the language is so claustrophobic, right? And again, the hierarchy to it, right? You meet somebody, and because a tense don't match, you immediately think that they don't have a brain, right? Which is totally ridiculous because, English is just one of the hardest languages to learn. But no, the majority of Jamaican people speak Jamaican. English is actually difficult to learn, and we do it in school imperfectly. And most times, Jamaicans are speaking it. It's a variety of English, and we always make a lot of mistake, because sometimes you can't keep up with the some of the tenses and some of the pronouns and some of the those kind of things.
One thing I never quite understand is like for some of these the countries, independent countries,
Right.
and that I mean, you freed yourself from the English colonialism, yet legally we keep their languages as our official languages.
Hmm.
How do you explain that?
I I don't know if I can explain it.
Hmm.
I mean, I certainly don't agree with it,
Hmm.
but the language of commerce, capital actually have no loyalty.
That's true.
It's the money, and wherever they can make any more money, even if they have to burn down the earth, they'll make the money. So that whole system to make money use the English language and force everybody
To
to
speak it.
use the English language to get somewhere, right? Otherwise, you're left out of different places. And why our governments do it? Because they're neo-colonial
Yeah,
governments.
not fact
And
that. Yeah.
and now is the process of decolonizing. And the poets
Mm.
and the singers have been at the forefront
Mhm.
of, all of this, wanting the language back, keeping it, emancipate yourself from mental slavery,
Mhm.
as Brother
That-
Bob
that's
said,
it. Yeah.
right? And calling the system to account. Yeah. And I think we need to do more of that. So our children, especially, right, can feel strong and feel,
Proud also.
proud.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But
So
but I don't know why we are so vested in the English language as if it's and the French language too, and
mhm.
in some cases the Portuguese language, because they're the hierarchical language. We should be cussing against them all the time.
Is there a standardization in terms of the writing of the local language? Was it only purely a spoken language?
You know what? There is an attempt
Mhm.
of a broad
Mhm.
standardization because everything is regional.
Okay.
Everything affects you. The landscape affects how you think, how you
Mhm.
walk, the music. So they're thinking about that. You have dub poets in England. They spell things differently because of the way the British pronounce
Mhm.
things differently. It's those in the U.S. differently.
That's
Those in Trinidad differently. And me, in Canada, in Toronto, kind of straddling, the
the two
Jamaican
countries.
roots
Yes. Yeah.
and so on, and trying to make it accessible so it can do its work is a little bit of a mixture. I
Okay.
wouldn't say it's a root. It comes from the root.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a fruit.
I like that. Because to bear fruit, like you have to plant the roots.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, which is great. So we used to talk about your poetry, but I like the way the conversation was going as
Mm,
well because it's all part and parcel of your writing.
yeah.
Because your writing came from that root. It grew from your upbringing in Jamaica, and also like what I like is the way you're trying to keep the the meaning of the life in Jamaica alive. Even if you're bringing it to a perspective in North America, I feel that when you talk about the sensations, like yesterday, we almost feel that we go there with you. We're walking the path with you.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I write the kind of poetry I love to
Okay.
hear, first and foremost. So we came up in the British system
Hmm.
of education. So we studied the hardcore,
Yes.
from Chaucer, Shakespeare, then the Euro American, and the Irish poets and so forth. But basically, um, getting down to who we are, the core of it, and not even stopping at Jamaica
Hmm.
because we didn't just arrive in Jamaica. We come from
That's
somewhere.
right. Yeah.
We belong to somebody, right? And that is in our bones, in our blood, right? And that can be wiped away. And if we wipe that away, who are we? Anybody can tell us who we
Hmm.
are, right? Any ad on TV can say, you're this, you're that. But
Hmm.
if you know who you truly are, right? Nobody can tell you who you are.
Yeah.
So to bring all of those things in, things I love, feelings, plus black people just love music. We
Yes.
love moving. We can sit down at a fire and listen to something too. But basically, the ones I know, we just love chat, music,
Yeah.
dance, being part of the earth, being part of nature, you know, getting our voices out there. we're basically happy
Yes,
people.
that
You know, it's the
that's true.
conditions that press us down. You know, that's my experience. The poorest of poor,
Yeah.
right? Give them a little water
Yep.
or something.
And also
Yeah.
like anything can be a musical instrument. And this is the
Anything.
this is the fun part of it,
Yeah.
which you talk about like sitting around the fire, whether like you have a spoon, whether like you have a box or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is,
Mm-hmm.
it's become a musical
Mm-hmm.
instrument.
Yeah. Yeah. Got the music come through you.
Hmm.
I mean, some of it from you, but really it is just coming through you. It's our universal connection. That music, it can't done
No.
because it's something coming from, way down the line from us through us. Even before the universe come into being, it was music, right? And so it's in us. We are the indigenous peoples of the earth.
Hmm.
We are, them things come up through we that spread out in terms of how the earth get populated.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about this happiness
Yeah.
that Caribbean people, African people in some instances, but not as much, seems to carry. Where did we find this joy of life? Where did it come from?
Well, two places, well, or maybe more, but I'm thinking that one, talk about the joy of life, this joy of giving
Hmm.
life, right? Because, even the process of birth is that this and that, and I have a poem about you live and you live, and right?
Hmm.
That's a sheer joy. And we can do that, right? We live in communities. So that's there too,
Hmm.
right? And I think when we have to respond to our conditions and oppression, we remember that joy mostly, right? And I can't remember the name of the Irish poet who said, the worse the oppression, the bigger the beauty and creativity.
Mm.
And that is one of our tools to fight and resist, to bring beauty in the world. The beauty is balance and justice and so on. And if we can't do it in big ways in corporate boardrooms, we're gonna do it in the small ways through our
Mhm.
writing, through our music, through our cooking.
Yes.
Lord Jesus, the spices. I'm telling you, I mean, I had a big family, man.
Yeah.
Those events. I mean, I'm kind of foreignized, but I go there and I'm like, wow,
Wow.
and yeah. So I think we know that joy
Mhm.
is our birthright, and if you give joy a chance, we'll tree outside, just
Yeah,
go, boom.
that's right. Wow.
Then when it take a rest, we know it taking a rest, and then in the spring, then green as ever and everything. And I think that is something psychically that we it's a gift we give to the world, really. Last night, as I said, think if we never have black music in the world.
Yes, that's right. For a moment,
Just
it'll
that's a
be pretty dull
pretty
place.
low place. Yeah,
Indeed.
we take all them pain and everything, and look what we give the world. You know.
We talk about joy, and one thing I like in your being is even when you're talking, the way your all the body moves with the words, with the it seems like everything in you, Lillian, is written. Is that true? Is that the way you feel?
Well, I mean, you're describing it that way, and I like it. But you know, I don't know. I just feel alive.
Hmm.
I mean, there are lots of time I'm resting quiet. I
Hmm.
meditate a lot too, but I am so grateful to be alive,
Yeah.
and so grateful for the gifts I've been given. And I have pain, I have everything else, and so forth. But I have to say, in the balance, I've been truly blessed. And I know that there are so many other people in the world, and people whom I know who their situation is so dire, right? And I look at that and I'm like, wow.
I feel good.
I feel good, and I want to carry that good feeling and do good in the world. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the this book that we have here, "Make the World New," and then this is talk about the this is a selection of poetry that I guess you have written over the years.
Yeah,
Okay.
and some new ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some books and some that were wandering around.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the book. I guess it's available pretty much everywhere. So that just for the people like watching us, so that they want to get it. Where the people can buy the book, like is it available online?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Amazon got everything.
yeah.
They got your DNA, they got
Hmm.
your mother's DNA, they got your grandmother's DNA, they got your credit card number. They can
That's
buy.
right.
So, and you can ask your local bookstore to
That's
get
what
it for
no, that's
you,
well.
but
Okay.
you can just Google and get it. you know.
So perhaps, Lillian, if you want to pick one of, I know it's hard sometimes to pick
Mm-hmm.
the poem that that you like the most
Right.
from a book.
I
So
can
perhaps if you can share one with us.
I can pick the one I like the
Oh, the one like you were
most.
talking about, like
But I want,
the
yeah.
poems. Yeah.
Will you read it with me
Ah,
as
sure.
much
Can
as
try.
you can?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can move closer. On that.
Yeah, that's okay.
And I just felt inspired when I was listening to your panel, right? Talking about poetry. So this one is called The Poetry of Things. There is a place where no language goes,
Where fear is a door,
where the mind comes to the edge of itself, reaches beyond, beyond
find itself where heartbeats are born, in the deep
deep black
black
comfort
comfort of
of life's
life's
passages,
passages. Nothing to declare or defend.
where infinity struggles to measure itself in the
In the perfect world of
perfection,
imperfection,
the place from which poetry springs. Everything well and
and
wonderful
wonderful is
is
poetry.
poetry.
This is great. And I'd like to repeat this phrase. Everything
Everything well.
well and wonderful is poetry. And I think also like one thing we were saying like just earlier, poetry is life and life is poetry.
Yeah.
And sometimes like I think we need to bring a little bit more poetry into our lives, into the world actually, because if people would read,
You on that?
yeah, a little bit more poetry, and as somebody mentioned yesterday, would be probably less war in the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's such a peaceful way to express yourself, even if you're upset or angry. I've a poem. I fight back. I fight back. You need an imperial back of cover, right? But it still works. It's still loving. It's not shooting anybody down. It's provide a space for people to think beyond the poem. What's she talking about? What does she want me to think about, right? It's yeah, I think more poetry,
Mhm.
you know.
Well, one of the poets that were with us said, at least because we're four of us, he said there
Mm-hmm.
are four less criminal or four less potential criminal in the world because we write poetry and then we can express like with words rather than with guns.
Well, I don't know if I'd say criminal, but for less people are willing to take up arms. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. Yeah, yeah. No, and that's why the young people, I see them, and I actually was listening to some of them today, and my heart is so full. I'm so glad to have lived so long to see that, because when I started out, it was such a big fight against spoken word and dub poetry in this country, by the establishment and
Mhm.
established poets. What's this thing? What did she have said and this and what's the gonna spoil poetry? Do you expect all of us to do that?
Mhm.
Big thing. Article. I mean, can be looked up in Globe and Mail and all over, right? And but I knew from my African heritage and tradition
That's what it is to do.
that's what this to do. And language. will never fail us if we're faithful and true.
I totally agree with you.
And
One thing
yeah.
also that I get from that is that the fact that people tend to put down things that they don't understand, things that they
Yes.
can't control as well.
Hmm.
And that whenever I listen to dub, to slam, uh, to what people tend to call a spoken word, is because some of it they can't understand and they can't
Yeah.
control it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And what's the hurry?
Mhm,
I mean, you know, even if it's bad,
mhm,
why bother criticizing it? Because nothing good ever starts out excellent. I mean, I started out doing violets or blue, whatever, when I was 4 or 5, right? And now I started a whole program at a university, a
mhm.
degree program, right? And I teach at the university, and I've, grown into it, right? But if I took the criticism or you start criticizing me before I even get a chance,
To, to
instead of
express,
training
yeah.
me and supporting me and saying, where would I be? And people are just afraid that their world will change.
That's correct. And most of us don't like change. They don't like drastic change.
Like,
Okay,
yeah,
and this is the disruption,
and
right?
this is disruption.
This is it,
Yeah,
and this is not the norm,
right.
and they can't fit
It's not
within
predictable.
the norm. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if it's not predictable, they can't budget and predict and so forth. They have no idea that there's so many poets out
Mhm,
there.
mhm,
They figure in entire Canada, maybe 150
mhm.
instead of
Thousands. Yeah.
thousands, right?
Mhm,
So yeah, so that's the whole system they
mhm.
have to control.
Yeah.
They have to have their 20-year plan, how much hamburgers are going to be sold then.
Yep.
That's what our system is based on, the stocks and bonds and the whole headspace. So when we, as you say, disrupt, you have to get back to the drawing board.
Yep.
They don't know what's going on.
No.
It's unpredictable. Well, what next will they come up with?
Yep.
Well, we got more.
Or
And we want the kids to come up with more. Free them.
okay.
Yeah.
So it seems that's about the time that we have.
Oh yeah, we're
Left.
just trying to.
Before we finish, Lillian, what would it take for the dub poetry, for slam to be a little bit more well known and well published?
You're asking me all these hard questions. I think we keep doing
Mhm,
what we're doing, and those of us who have managed to get our feet in somewhere in a door
mhm.
to open that door wider.
Yeah,
We can do publishing companies, we can do recordings, we can even do radio
that's
stations,
right.
you know. And it's for us to know that this comes from our culture because art comes from culture,
That's correct.
and culture is community.
That's right.
And so the community have to get involved, all those people with resources and so forth, and say, look, this is such an important part of who we are. Let's try and support this and bring this. But I think we're doing a pretty good
Good job.
job. And I'm proud of it. I was so happy to come to this
Yeah,
conference.
and happy that you were part of it yesterday as well, to bring a different voice to this salon. Alors, merci beaucoup à tout le monde. J'ai eu le plaisir d'avoir avec moi Lilian Allen qui nous arrivait de Toronto. Alors, le salon continue encore demain. Alors, j'espère que si vous êtes à l'écoute quelque part, que vous allez venir nous joindre, rencontrer des poètes comme Liliane et d'autres qui sont ici avec vous au Salon du Livre afro-canadien à Ottawa, au Collège La Cité.
Thank you.